Welcome to Track Your Cycle and Discover Your Power, presented by Daisy. Thank you for joining me today. For the first section of this 45-minute, hour-long workshop, we're going to look at menstrual cycle awareness. So for some of us, the only thing we're really aware of in terms of our cycle is that we have a period. And perhaps we might also be aware that we have the possibility of a PMS during our premenstrual phase. And those are really the only 2 points of our cycle that we're very aware and engaged in the fact that we're having a menstrual cycle. But there are actually 4 menstrual cycle phases. The follicular phase, which is also known as pre-ovulatory phase, the ovulatory phase, which is your fertile window or ovulation, the luteal phase, which is either known as the premenstrual phase, as I just mentioned, or your post-ovulatory phase, if you're looking at the cycle in 2 parts, and then menstruation or your period days. So you can see on the illustration there that those are marked in terms of cycle days being the average used of 28 days, and then also the colours that Daisy gives you, which is, as you probably already know, and we will go over this in more detail later, green being not fertile, red being fertile, and yellow being the unique Valley Electronics fertility tracker method, learning intelligent light that shows you that Daisy is telling you there are fluctuations in your cycle, more information is needed. So menstrual cycle awareness and what's happening at each stage of your cycle can give you a completely different perspective. It can often give you a more positive perspective because knowledge is power, and the more knowledge we have about what we're going through week to week gives us a sense of control and confidence. The cycle's no longer a mystery, it doesn't feel unknowable, and that can be a very positive and beneficial experience for many women. It's important to note that if you are on most types of hormonal birth control, you won't be experiencing this menstrual cycle. You don't ovulate and you don't experience actual menstruation. It's a very different hormonal experience when you're using most forms of hormonal birth control. Each phase may bring a shift in energy, interests, mood, skills. All sorts of things can come into play with those hormonal waves and peaks and troughs and shifts throughout the menstrual cycle. For an example, and these may apply to you, they may not apply to you, but you may feel more sociable around ovulation or your ovulatory phase. You may feel more introverted during your luteal phase. You may feel more communicative during your follicular phase, or you may find that you have a real passion for cleaning and tidying up and sorting things out in your home during the luteal phase. We're all different, obviously, but there are some commonalities in terms of the types of interests and energies and skills and moods that we have throughout the menstrual cycle. So here is a little bit more on that. So here we're focusing on, really it's a sense of the science basis for what's known as the cycle syncing these days. So where your hormones are at, so the levels of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone at different points in your cycle will affect your overall body chemistry and biology. So here we're looking at fitness, food, and mood specifically. So you'll see, for example, pre-ovulatory phase or the follicular phase, you will build muscle faster due to the rising estrogen. And that means if you want to lean into that and sort of use that as a biohack and take advantage of it, then you can concentrate more on strength and harder workouts during that time. And for example, in the pre-ovulatory or the follicular phase, food, estrogen is appetite suppressant, and so you might not be as hungry. You might not feel like you need to eat as much, and you will burn calories more quickly. And then mood, you'll see testosterone is rising towards ovulation, which increases your libido. Often you'll have a better mood, a more positive, optimistic mood, and you may have more motivation too. So this is all information on the Daysy website, and I think it's hormones, fitness, food, and mood. But yeah, this is a little breakdown of what I mean when I say that menstrual cycle awareness can be helpful to us in terms of our deciding how we map out our lives, or just not finding resistance in certain areas where we would have been better off knowing that it wasn't a great time to be doing something like that. So now we're going to look at fertility myths and fertility facts. So this slide just shows the myths. So these are all common statements or concepts that we hear a lot, perhaps in school, when we're studying, perhaps from friends, from family, from our doctor. It can really come from many places, but they're quite pervasive. While we're going through these, have a think to yourself, like whether you've believed some of these at some point. Maybe you don't anymore, maybe you still do. Many women get into their 20s often with these misconceptions. It's just, you know, down to a lack of education in this area, really. So the first myth is that you can conceive at any point in your cycle. This is one maybe we hear most when we're in our younger years, teens and 20s. The next one is your menstrual cycle should be 28 days in length as a prescriptive thing, or as a norm. The next one is you ovulate at the same time every cycle. Now, this is one that you may have even heard in the medical office. You can ovulate twice in one cycle. This is one we still hear a lot at Daysy now, so we were going to tackle that one today. Fertility only matters if you want a baby. Now, I think that's a huge one, which we'll unpack a little bit too, that many of us will have carried around for quite some time. So those are our 5 myths, and these are the opposite end, the facts for each. So I'm going to go through these. So for the first one, we had a woman can get pregnant at any point in her cycle. And the fact of it is that women are only able to get pregnant on 6 days per cycle. Women are fertile the 1 to 2 days the egg survives in the body, or the ovum, and sperm can survive a maximum of 5 days in the female body. Together, this makes up the 6-day fertile window in which you could fall pregnant, and the rest of your cycle, you don't get pregnant. You simply can't. It's not biologically feasible. Men, on the other hand, to give you the sort of context, are actually fertile every single day and for much longer time in their lives than women, because women obviously go through menarche and then menopause, whereas men have a much wider stretch of fertility, viable fertility. The next myth was that a cycle should be 28 days in length. The fact is that cycles may vary month to month. As we get older, they may change. They may change due to real life impacts like illness, medications, stress, sleep. Our recent study, which I'll talk about a bit more later on, showed the average cycle length for Daysy users is actually 29.5 days. And only 12.5% of cycles in the study, part of the study, were 28 days in length. So the actual average is around 29.5 according to that study, and is similar to many other studies of the same type. The average length of the follicular phase, which is that pre-ovulatory phase between the period and ovulation, was 16.8 days, while the average length of the luteal or premenstrual phase was 12.8 days. And that's from the study too. The next myth was that a woman ovulates at the same time every month. And obviously we usually hear this to be day 14, as the norm is 28 days. We usually hear it to be day 14. But actually, women can ovulate at a different time each month. Most women have an ovulatory window that shifts around, but we can ovulate at a different time. Not all menstrual cycles are 28 days long, and ovulation does not occur always in the middle of a cycle. Ovulation can be delayed by stress, by sickness, by changes to diet, or even just excessive exercise, like training for a marathon, starting a new workout regime, can also be changed by lack of sleep. So some cycles you might not ovulate at all, and these are called anovulatory cycles. And ovulation timing dictates your cycle length. So usually your luteal or premenstrual phase tends to stay the same, within the same boundaries of length. So once you know you've ovulated, you can pretty much know when you'll get to the end of your cycle and get your period, your next period. But there are many factors, of course, within our lifestyles that can affect that. So ovulation is not a set point in the cycle. The next myth was you can ovulate twice in one cycle. Now, as I said, we do still hear this quite a lot, and so it's worth tackling. While you could ovulate twice in a month due to short cycles, so cycles that cross over within 1 month, there might be 2 menstrual cycles that you experience. You won't ovulate twice within 1 menstrual cycle unless you release 2 eggs within 24 hours. And this is how we get fraternal twins. So you can release 2 eggs within 24 hours, but you cannot ovulate twice at 2 separate times within 1 menstrual cycle. The last big myth, pervasive myth, fertility is only important if you want to have a baby, get pregnant. As I've said here, ovulation is a sign of overall wellness and can have short and long-term health benefits. So ovulating regularly, which means most cycles, means your body is happy and healthy. If you're not ovulating, then there's usually an underlying hormonal imbalance issue or health issue, or you may have just had 1 month where you're not taking great care of yourself, or you've been sick, or you've changed your diet, exercise, or there's just a lot of stress in your life at that point. One anovulatory cycle is normal. You know, having anovulatory cycles is not abnormal, but ovulating regularly most cycles is a goal, in a sense, for your health and wellness. Ovulation boosts both your physical and mental health. Without ovulation, you may experience more PMS type symptoms, and from everything from bloating to mood, negative mood changes, and also short and long-term health issues, such as related to bone, heart, and breast health. Ovulation has been shown by CEMCOR, the Centre for Menstrual Cycle and Ovulation Research in Canada, to be protective in terms of bone, heart, and breast health for women. Okay, so the next slide breaks that down a little bit more. The American Committee for Obstetricians and Gynecologists actually recommends tracking your menstrual cycle, and they see the menstruation as a 5th vital sign of health for women. Tracking your cycle and your fertility signs can help you uncover thyroid health issues, food allergies or intolerances, hormonal imbalances like progesterone deficiency, and more. So it's a great thing to know that you are ovulating, to support ovulation in your choices in lifestyle and diet, and your health will benefit from that. So here you can see some of the things I've mentioned before, like supports breast health, can reduce risk of heart disease, supports thyroid function, healthy sleep patterns, regulates your immune system, brain health, and very importantly, protects the strength and health of your bones. Yeah, so that's basically the idea, is that if you can have as many ovulatory cycles as you can, and this doesn't mean, you know, that this doesn't include pregnancy, of course, which is perfectly normal, healthy experience, before menopause, then you often have protection against certain number of health issues that women would experience in later life. So next we're going to look at Fertility Awareness 101. So we looked at menstrual cycle awareness, now we're going to look at fertility awareness. So I'm sure many of you have heard of this, especially if you already use Daysy. Fertility awareness is the practice of tracking your menstrual cycle and fertility by monitoring the signs of fertility that your body provides. You get to know when you're in your fertile window, which encompasses some of the follicular phase and that ovulatory phase, and you get to know when you are outside your fertile window. The fertile window is the 6 days that we discussed regarding the lifespan of the ovum or egg and the lifespan potential of sperm in the female body. Plus, with fertility awareness methods of all types, there are usually added some buffer days or potentially fertile days to the beginning or end. So if you use Daysy already, you'll know you don't just get 6 red days per cycle or 6 fertile days per cycle, you get more than that. That's common for any method that would be considered under the fertility awareness banner. The available fertility signs are basal body temperature, which you'll be familiar with Daysy, cervical fluid, which you'll be familiar with if you use the app, cervix position, and your period timing. Fertility awareness-based methods are used by women to support them in achieving or avoiding pregnancy. So, with Valley Electronics, and so many of you use Daysy, what you're looking at and what you're using in that method is the fertility tracker method. So we just discussed the fertility awareness methods, and the fertility tracker method would come under that umbrella. It's specific to Valley Electronics devices. So Daysy, Lady Comp, which is Daisy's mom, and Pearly, which I suppose is Daisy's sister or aunt in the timeline, they use the fertility tracker method. The fertility tracker method is a fertility awareness-based method using the fertility sign of basal body temperature plus period data. It's designed to be used independently as a method without needing instruction or requiring instruction from a trained practitioner. And it's also designed to limit the possibility of user error. The fertility tracker itself tracks your basal body temperature and calculates your fertile and not fertile days using a self-learning intelligent algorithm. So the fertility tracker method was developed over 3 decades ago, actually 4, I think, at this point. First, it was initiated in 1986 with the Lady Comp device, which was invented by Dr. Hubertus Reckberg. He was looking to create an alternative to the pill for his wife, who had some side effects at that time. Daysy and the company, its parent company, Valley Electronics, started small and has stayed small. It's a family-run company that is now woman-owned, as Dr. Hubertus Reckberg's daughter, Natalie Reckberg, is CEO and founder of Daysy and now Valley Electronics. And Daysy, like Lady Comp before it, uses your basal body temperature plus a unique self-learning algorithm to determine your fertile window. The algorithm is based on 5 million menstrual cycle data in many different scenarios. So not just your average menstrual cycle, but menstrual cycles affected by some of the things that we've mentioned before, like stress, sickness, poor sleep, etc. The concept is the fertility tracker method simplifies the process of tracking your fertility, avoiding the need, as I said, for additional training over weeks or months, and helps you to avoid human error issues like misinterpreting your signs. So the device itself takes your temperature, stores that data, analyzes that data, and provides you with your fertility status all in one system, which is meant to be intuitive and easy to use. Here's a nice breakdown. So you have with Daysy the sensor. Now, basal body temperature thermometers are different to a thermometer you would use for a fever. They are highly calibrated. The Daysy sensor is specific in that it uniquely waits for your final temperature value to stabilize, which is why when you take your temperature with your Daysy in the morning, it might take a minute or more. You might feel like it's taking longer than perhaps you've experienced with other thermometers. That's because it's waiting for the final temperature value to stabilize. It's not making any guesses or assumptions about what that value would be. The algorithm is actually part of the device itself. It's not on the app, it's on the device, and it's adapted to the female cycle and uses statistically significant evaluation for the post-ovulation temperature rise, which we'll discuss in a minute, plus using current and historical data from the database and your own data. The tracker is all about it being intuitive, so it combines the sensor, the algorithm, and the device itself so that everything is in one system. So here you'll see, this is the kind of chart you will see on Daysy Day, the app that you sync your Daysy to for more insight into your cycle. So this really breaks down what you're looking at here. So you've got, as I mentioned before, the greens or the not fertile days, the reds or the fertile days, and then the yellow, which is a unique Valley Electronics Fertility Tracker Lite, Fertility Tracker Method Lite, that shows that the algorithm is intelligent and self-learning and reflexive and responsive, and is saying your cycle is fluctuating or there needs to be more information. These are usually treated as potentially fertile days, or they are treated as potentially fertile days. As you'll see here, what we're looking at is that you have your period, which are these green with the white centers, and you enter that on your Daysy. Then you will have some greens, therefore, prior to the ovulatory phase and prior to your fertile window opening up. And then the red indicates your fertile window and those buffer days I mentioned that all fertility awareness methods come with. And then after your ovulation is confirmed, as it states here, your temperature is higher after you ovulate. So you get hotter, not something that you will perceive yourself, but that a highly calibrated sensor does perceive. It's a very accurate way of knowing that you have ovulated. The only other more accurate way would be being in the doctor's office at the exact time of ovulation during those hours and seeing it on an ultrasound, which obviously is not an option most of us have access to. So basal body temperature is it, really. And then once it's confirmed, you go into greens because you are not going to ovulate again, as we talked about, in one menstrual cycle. So you know that after that point, after the ovum has continued on its journey, not fertilized, and you are not going to be fertile. So those are greens, and then your temperature actually drops, as it says here, right before you get your period. And so therefore, you then see that you have a dip in the few days before your menstruation, which makes it a very accurate way of being able to predict when you get your period too. So here you'll see it saying it's using basal body temperature, your period timing, plus that unique algorithm, which is essential to the fertility tracker method. So as I mentioned earlier, we recently had a new study published, and this study pioneers a new way to present the accuracy of femtech for fertility or medtech for fertility. Analysing an unprecedented 110,000 menstrual cycles from 5,328 women over a 10-year period, that's a huge long-scale study, the researchers discovered the Daysy fertility tracker effectively calculates the fertile window of a woman's cycle, her infertile days, and the shifts in the phase of the menstrual cycle, which means that the conclusion of this new study was that it is 99.4% accurate in determining your green or not fertile days. This is not the first study that has been done on the fertility tracker method of the Valley Electronics trackers, but it is the latest one on Daysy, which I know is the device most of you use. You can look that up. It's available to read in full online if you search the title. And so you can take a look at that in your own time. So the Daysy details. So here we're going to talk a bit more about how you use Daysy. Now, some of you may be very aware of this and be doing this, but let's go through it for those who are still considering and those who are not sure. So with Daysy, what you're doing is you're taking your basal body temperature first thing when you wake up in the morning, before you do anything else. So before you drink your coffee, speak, move around too much, get up, certainly before you go to the toilet. And then we recommend that you have a minimum of 3 consecutive hours of sleep prior to taking your temperature, because that's how you get to the basal body temperature or resting temperature state. And that you have to input your period days or menstruation days using the central button on Daysy, and that's it. So it's very simple and intuitive. Daysy then gives you a red, green or yellow light based on where you are in your cycle, and whether you are fertile or not. You can then view your data in the Daysy Day app, which includes the chart that we just looked at, or graph, a calendar with all the colours represented, but also predictions if you want them. Those can be turned on and off. Statistics, so average cycle length, average length of different phases, when you get your periods, all of those things are in the cycle stats and accessible to you just through the app alone. And also you can take notes on other cycle awareness or menstrual cycle awareness points, or fertility awareness points. So that can be, you can take notes on the heaviness of your period or type of bleeding. You can also track your cervical fluid types. You can take notes in a little text box, like a journal box. So there's many different options for you to add on to the fertility awareness track or fertility tracker function of Daysy and Daysy Day, with as much information as you want to add to what I would call your sort of body literacy knowledge. Yes, so Daysy Day is actually a new updated app for us. It's still relatively new on the scale of things, and it gets frequently more updates as our app team works on it. It includes cervical fluid tracking options, the ability to turn cycle predictions or future predictions off if you don't want to see them, and options to track the kind of sex you had. Maybe that's helpful to you if you're trying to conceive, you want to know if it was protected, unprotected, and so on. So now we're going to look at some context. So as I said, Daysy uses a fertility tracker method, but many of us have used period tracker apps that are free on our phone, that only ask us to engage in insofar as when did you get your period, or what was the first day of your period, and that's it. So I wanted to highlight the differences here. Your period tracker app might try to tell you when you ovulate or that you are fertile. If it's only taking your period start dates, it really has no right to be telling you that. Unfortunately, it's making guesses around some of the myths that we mentioned earlier, like the average cycle length, ovulation timing, things that are really misconceptions and are not accurate or precise. If it's only taking your period start dates, it shouldn't be giving you additional information like that. You really need to be tracking a fertility sign every day to actually know when you're fertile, and that's called practicing the fertility awareness method. This is because, as I mentioned before, ovulation doesn't happen at the same time each cycle. Ovulation can move, and we all have unique cycles that change over time, depending on our lifestyle at the current moment and also just aging. Daysy tracks your basal body temperature to confirm ovulation and utilizes your cycle data with a 3-month learning phase, which is an important part of the fertility tracker method. All the devices have this 3-cycle learning phase in which it's gathering the data it needs to give you the accurate fertility status information. And also using statistical analysis to set your fertile window to include the lifespan of sperm. As I mentioned, that's 5 days maximum. So Daisy's doing all that and bringing that all into the algorithm to give you accurate information. Your fertile window will begin in the follicular phase of your cycle and go through the ovulatory phase, or just ovulation, into the early days of your luteal phase. So that's including that fertile window and some buffer on either end. You will receive green lights after ovulation is confirmed, using basal body temperature as an accurate sign, and green lights before your fertile window opens, using your historical data and the algorithm in combination. So I hope that's very clear. At the end, when we do our Q&A, we can go into that more, and your specific questions. So here is some information on the benefits of fertility tracking. So maybe you thought, oh, it's just about the red and greens and that's it. And maybe that's great. And maybe that's useful enough for you. But we want you to know that there is a lot you can get out of Daysy. There's a lot you can get out of Valley Electronics trackers as a whole. And there's a lot more to learn if you want. Of course, it's not necessary, but if you're interested. So of course, you know when you are fertile and could conceive, but you also know when your period is coming with great accuracy. This is incomparable to a regular period tracker app on your phone that's free, because you're using that basal body temperature data every day, which is absolutely essential to get accurate information. You can also use the data you're getting through Daysy to uncover fertility or cycle-related health issues like PCOS, thyroid conditions and even food sensitivities. We have users, women who've been in touch with us and uncovered all kinds of interesting things from their data, either with discussing with us or taking it to their doctor or healthcare provider. And that's great feedback for help for diagnosis and treatment, of course, which is important. You can also track the impact of any natural treatment protocols for fertility or cycle-related health issues that you decide to take up. So maybe you decide to take up diet or lifestyle changes to help with your PCOS or some other health issue, and that the impact of those and the benefit of those can be seen with immediate almost feedback from your cycle, which is a great sort of feedback loop in terms of what's going on with your body. You can see if you start ovulating again, you can see how it's impacting your cycles. You can also accurately cycle sync your diet or lifestyle. So that's some of the mood, food, and fitness things we mentioned earlier. If you know exactly where you are in your cycle, which is really the only way you can do that is through fertility tracking, is you can optimize a biohack and really lean into some of those benefits you get from when your hormones are highest or lowest at different points in that cycle. You can also monitor your stress levels in real time and practice self-care. There's an interesting study about how many women are not aware that they're chronically stressed, but your cycle will often be the first primary communicator of that happening. And we'll be able to show you that so you can take action. Also, if you are aware more of luteal phase or the premenstrual phase, it can help with managing PMS symptoms, mood symptoms. Sometimes it's just great to know where you're at in your cycle, can help you feel more confident and in control. And you can also participate actively in your own healthcare, because you can provide the data from the Daysy Day app to your healthcare practitioner or doctor via email very simply, and share it with them so that you can be a partner in solving any issues that may be communicated through your cycle, or if you're having infertility worries and things like that. You can request a cycle analysis from our customer support team that are trained in chart reading at any time, and this goes even further than what you see on the app, and they can let you know, sending you all the charts and breakdowns of your historical data, which of course is fantastic if you've been using Daysy for 5 years or more, and you have access to all of that. Also, and this is a nice perk or bonus, Daysy can have benefits for your relationship. It can make it easier to communicate with your partner about your fertility status and fertility goals. Now, we get this feedback a lot, that using Daysy has helped, in the fertility tracker method as a whole, has helped relationships in terms of improving communication, gaining support from your partner, increasing intimacy, and adding a level of shared responsibilities. As you'll see, we had someone say, sharing this experience with my partner helps us both build a relationship where we have responsibility. Improving your sex life because you're more in tune with your cycle changes, and you're feeling confident and calm about your fertility status. Being aware of cycle phases, like when you might be in line for having some PMS, or feel more introverted, or getting your period. And all of that, if you want, can be shared, in that you can have your partner download the Daysy Day Partner app, and the Daysy Day Partner app lets them access whatever information from whatever point you decide. So maybe that's everything, or just ovulation, or just certain things, or just tracking when you're having sex, if you're trying to conceive. Things like that can actually be shared through an app, but also just day to day, obviously living the experience of using Daysy. So the last slide here is going to just break down, is Daysy right for me? There's not a ton of people who would be ruled out of using Daysy. Are your menstrual cycles usually 19 to 40 days in length? This is the recommended for Daysy users. Most women, their cycle will fall. Even if you feel your cycle is irregular, Daysy can handle irregularity and changeable cycles. But many of us will find our cycles normally fall between 19 to 40 days in length. And of course, a cycle that doesn't, or one-off, or isn't a problem. It's just about the norm for you. You do need to be having a period, so you can tell Daysy when you get your period. You can't be on any kind of hormonal contraceptive, although we have had some women using the copper IUD, which is not hormonal, and use Daysy at the same time, interestingly. You do need partner support, because you're doing something where you want to communicate whether you're red or green that day, and that you're tracking your fertility. And it's always helpful to have partner support in that sort of decision making. And you need to be able to measure your temperature each day after a recommended 3 consecutive hours of sleep. So you get that basal body temperature data. You just need to be able to do that as many days as possible. You are able to miss some days, but the goal should be as many days as you can. If you answered yes, then Daysy is right for you. And you should be confident in your decision. So I think we've come to the end of our side workshop here. I am going to stop the recording, and then we will carry on with our Q&A.